This evening, I'll be sharing with you a few of the common WordPress errors that I've experienced, and I'm sure other developers have experienced it also during your WordPress journey. I'm not going to go too technical because I don't know the knowledge of the audience here. So I'm going to go with just 5. I initially had 7. So I'm going to go with 5 common errors, and we're going to work through them one by one. And I'm going to share my knowledge in terms of techniques I've used, what possibly might be the problem, and solutions. If you also have techniques that you've used that's different from mine, please feel free to share as we go along. So let's begin. All right. What is an error or a WordPress error? And WordPress for errors, WordPress errors will be when something is not working as it should. So you go to your website that you normally have up and you notice that something is not right. That's when you'll try to find a solution for that problem. And this evening we're gonna go through just a few of them, and we're gonna go through first the types of WordPress errors. Now, there are quite a few types of errors. I've just listed a few of them here, but I'm sure there are others that you can find. But some of the common ones are normally around whether it's a theme error, a plugin error, a page error, PHP error, server database. And a lot of the common errors are normally around these categories. Now, for the page errors, it mainly has to do with how the page is displayed. It might not be related to a plugin or a theme or anything. It just maybe you copied a document from Word docs into the editor, WordPress editor, and it's not formatted correctly. So that can cause an error. For the theme error, it has to do with the layout of the page. So if you notice that a plugin is out of it's not in the right space, or something is just strange with it, that might be related to the theme itself. For plugin errors, it normally has to do with functionality. Sometimes it has to do with the layout also, but most of the times it has to do with functionality. Something is not working as it should. There's some vulnerability somewhere, and it really has to do with the enhancement of the WordPress platform. Now, when you have a PHP error, there's something there wrong in the backend of WordPress. So WordPress is built on PHP, the programming language PHP. So when they have a PHP error, chances are you have to check the code somewhere to see what is wrong. And we're gonna go through that as we go further in the presentation on how we can dissect all of these problems. I've just added a few of the errors from each of the categories just so it'd be a little clearer for you as we go along. So those are the types. I'm sure there are more, but for now, this is what we're gonna work with. I'm gonna go with 5 common errors. When I was doing the list of problems I came up with, it was a lot more than 5, but in the interest of time and to not overload you with information, we're just gonna work with 5 because the last one is multifaceted and it can go anywhere. So we'll see further as we go along. The first error is the 404 error, and this is a very, very common error. This is the 404 error means the page is not found. Page or file or whatever it is, it's not found. So it's telling you that whatever you're looking for cannot be found. So that the problem is possibly if you're clicking a link, the link could be broken, or the page could be renamed, or the file deleted or something. What I would recommend is first, if it's your website, searching for the file, search for the page itself and see if the page was renamed. you might need to replace it with updated link, or chances are the page is deleted or the file is deleted. So that's not really a solution, but it really tells you what's going on. And the other solution also could be to flush the slug by going to WordPress settings permalink. I know this is maybe a little technical, but the slug is really, when you go to a website and you're going to the About Us page, for example, it would say google.com/about us. So that /about us is normally the slug or the URL, half of the URL really, or half of the link. And some of the times when page links are not working, I normally just go to WordPress, in WordPress settings, and then permalinks, and then just click save. And for some reason, I don't know how it works, like it just flush everything, but it normally works sometimes after. This is an example of what it looks like. You can create your own 404 error. This is just a customized error page, but normally you just see page is broken or we can't find it. Sometimes it gives you the default from WordPress. Flushing the permalink, for example, is going to settings, and under settings, you have permalinks, and all you have to do is sometimes just click save and check the link again, and it works. If it doesn't, it could be something else that's going on, something wrong, something else that's wrong. So you might need to dig a little bit deeper. The second problem we have is parent theme is missing error. Now, if you've tried to upload a new theme before, you might have experienced this problem. Now, in WordPress, we have what we call a parent theme and a child theme. Now, when you get a new theme from anywhere, most of the places, Theme Forest is a common place to get it. Hello, is anybody saying something? All right, let's continue. When you're installing a theme, when you get a theme from Theme Forest, for example, they normally give you a package or a zip file with the parent theme and the child theme. The parent theme is normally the one that you shouldn't touch because if you make any edits to the parent theme, whenever there's an update for that theme, you will overwrite it. So all the changes that you've made will disappear. So they provide you with a child theme for you to make all the edits there, so that when you decide to update that theme, it only affects the parent theme and the child theme will inherit everything. Now, whenever you get this error, which means the parent theme is missing, every time I try this, it's normally you're trying to install the child theme before you install the parent theme. So when you try to install the parent theme before the child theme before the parent theme, you will get this error. And the solution is to install the parent theme first, then the child theme, and then both themes will be installed. This is an example of the error. On the screenshot, it says broken theme, and it will give you a message just below when you're trying to install the theme that the parent theme is missing. The third problem that people normally experience is WordPress maintenance error. And for WordPress maintenance error is when you are trying to update your plugins or your themes or whatever it is. What WordPress does, it temporarily puts the website in maintenance mode to update the files or the plugins in the backend, and then it removes the files after. But sometimes that file doesn't get deleted. Or sometimes you have to wait a little for the site to come back up. But if it doesn't work as it should, you will experience this problem which says, briefly unavailable for scheduled maintenance, please check back in a minute. Has anybody experienced this before?
Yeah, all the time.
All the time. Well, the first time I experienced it, I wasn't sure what to do. So I definitely went to Google for help. They had a bunch of solutions, but the one that really helped me was deleting the .maintenance file. So the solution for this problem, if you wait a little and you realize the message is still there, is to go into the root folder of where the site is stored. This is on your server. So whether you are hosting with GoDaddy or Bluehost or whichever one it is, you have to go where the core WordPress site, files are stored, and you will see a file called .maintenance file. Just delete that file. Nothing will happen. Just delete that file and your site will be up again. I was a little worried the very first time I tried it, but trust me, nothing will be wrong. So just remember that whenever you experience this problem again, just log into your server, delete the maintenance file in the root folder, and you should be good to go. The fourth problem, or fourth common problem, is error establishing a database connection. Now, when you receive that message, the problem, there could be numerous things that's happening, right? But most of the times, they have incorrect credentials. So let's say you're trying to install a fresh installation, and somewhere along the way, something went wrong. You will get this message. Or even sometimes it's an older website or a site that's up and running and this will happen. It's simply saying that the website is not connected in some way to the database. It's not able to read the connection. Nothing is happening. So you have to now find out what is the problem. This is an example of what it looks like. You'll see error establishing database, and that's the only thing you'll see on the website when you go to the website. The solution, first thing you have to do is check your database credentials. So check your files, and you can find that by going into the root folder of the server and the wp/config.php file, and look on the credentials or the password and username for the database that you're trying to connect to, and ensure that the password and the username are correct. And if you're 100% sure that's correct, then you can move on to the next step by checking to see if you're getting too much traffic. Because sometimes traffic, when you have too much traffic to the site, it can also trigger that error. Sometimes the database server is down, and that's another thing that we can explain, but a little more technical. So you'd have to probably give it some time for it to come back up. Sometimes the WordPress files are corrupted. So you might need to reinstall the WordPress core files, excluding the WP config file, because that file have access to your database. So you want to keep that safe. So you might need to manually connect, overwrite them using FTP to be safe. And the last resort is when you try everything and it's not working. It might be possible that the database could be corrupted. I hope this doesn't happen to you, but it is a possibility that you might have to figure out how to get that sorted out with the database. But worst case scenario, the database could be corrupted, and that's why you're getting that message. The final error, before we go into that, does anybody have any questions so far? No questions? Do you have any plugins or techniques that you've used for any of these so far?
Um, for me, well, for the 404 error one,
Mm-hmm.
um, well, a couple things help. One, as I said, if there's an issue with your permalink, maybe the slug was changed.
Right.
Um, so it's good to redirect from the previous URL to the new one, because uh, oftentimes the 404 error that one person might experience could be experienced by many people.
Right.
Um, so there's a plugin I've used for that. I don't remember what it's called, Simple Redirect or something like that. And the cool thing about it is that it also tracks 404 errors. So whenever there's a such an error on your site, it will log it, right? So
Okay.
you can know that people are searching for this particular thing, but they aren't finding it, and then you can set up a redirect for that. And also, there's a security plugin. I don't remember which one, either Word Fence or Server Security, which will also track 404 errors. So it's good to just keep an eye on those things and redirect the URL when necessary.
Yeah, it could also affect your SEO. So if it's a blog and for some reason it was working before and you know a lot of users are going to go to that link, it's a good thing to redirect it. I didn't even think about that, but it's really helpful to redirect to sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else?
For me, for the maintenance error, I don't remember the fix offhand. I'm trying to load the page to see, but I remember being able to disable and enable that error message
Mm-hmm.
by using a debug configs. I think, yes, one of the configs that's viable in the WP config file that's usually in it's not in the root folder. Okay, I don't remember the exact structure, but there is a WP config variable that you can use to enable and disable that error.
Yeah, I think it's in the WP config file. There's a line there that you can change to true or false. Is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
not just the debug, but the debug display.
Oh,
And there are few variables that control the debug. I think at one point I changed added to get the maintenance up. I think for the WP config file, those variables control whether it does the debugging and whether it displays it
mm-hmm.
when you're testing. And then there is another variable that can be initialized in the um, okay, I don't remember the name of it. It's one of the main files that usually loads all the functions that you have, that file. The index.php, there's another variable that you can initialize in there to get that error to come up if you're, and you can change the text that's there. I'm gonna look for it and see if I can find it before the end of the meeting.
Wow, I didn't know about that one, but I'll be very interested in knowing about that. All right, anybody else so far? All right, moving on, going back to the next final one. The white screen of death. A lot of people always talk about this one because so many things could go wrong or so many things could be happening when you receive this type of error. Now, normally when you see this error, you won't know right away what's wrong. So my solution to this problem, or how I normally go about troubleshooting it, is, so for example, if you go to your site and you notice that your site is completely blank and it's not supposed to look that way, something is definitely wrong. So how I normally, my approach for troubleshooting, I normally put the site in maintenance mode. There are plugins that allow you to do that. You could, there's a, I think it's called Coming Soon app, Coming Soon plugin. That's one I use a lot to put my site in maintenance mode. So I put it in maintenance mode and then activate debug mode. Now I'll go to the WP config file. Let me see if I can show you here. A lot of things going on, but one of the examples, WP config, and there is a debug phase here. So I'll change it from false to true. Mine is currently true. And once you debug that, once you change that to true, you will now be able to kind of know, not necessarily exactly what the problem is, but it will tell you something. So whether it's a PHP error or a plugin error or a theme error, there'll be something. Now, if you put it in debug mode and it's still not giving you anything, the next thing I would do is change my theme from the current theme to the basic theme, which is what WordPress gives you. Let me see if I can find it here. 2020 or 2012, depending on which year you have, but any one of the WordPress themes should work. And what you're trying to do is eliminate the problem. You're going through method of elimination to see what exactly could be the problem. No.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Hi, can I suggest something?
Yes.
Instead of putting the site back to the original default WordPress theme, because that sometimes may change up your formatting in terms of how the current theme lays it out. You could just rename all the plugins in the folder from your FileZilla. Rename them, put an X beside them, and then you start renaming them again to the original name to figure out what is causing the problem.
Okay, that's an idea. But here's the thing. There are times when you're working on a client website and they have 60 plugins installed. So sometimes you really have to know, you have to really figure out what's the best route or the fastest way to solve the problem without going to them one by one. I normally also try to deactivate the plugins one by one, which can be time consuming. And then you have to remember which one you deactivated to reactivate. So I know it's a tedious process, but doing that one by one has also, somebody raise their hand. Khalil?
Yeah, there's another potential thing that can give you some insight. It may not work all the time, but that's just to enable the developer console in your browser, whether you're using Chrome, Edge, or Firefox.
Right.
Because occasionally it's just a small script error or a file that can't be located. And that kind of information is usually thrown in the developer console. In a case where you mentioned with 60 plugins, it may be multiple issues and that wouldn't give you any real insight, but every now and then it might just be a very simple change, and instead of going through the process of disabling all those things one by one, you may just see an error message that points out that this resource isn't being located, and that's why the loading of the site stopped.
Okay. All right, that's an idea also. I didn't even think about that, but that's an idea also. Anybody else have any other solutions?
Well, just to touch on the whole plugin thing, yeah, I usually do, well, I've often done what Amoy suggested is renaming the plugin files, and I know it might be tedious, but there are there are tools now. I wish I could name one. I don't know if you can do this in FileZilla, where you can just bulk rename the folder. And the thing about that is that it will tell you immediately whether or not it's a problem with a plugin. So at least you'll have that information. And then you can go ahead and enable the plugin one by one. I don't know if you're familiar with like the binary search algorithm, but I'll just enable half of them and see if the problem is fixed, and enable half of what's left and keep on going until I enable a group of them and the site goes down again. Then I know that last group is that the plugin is in that last group that I enabled. So yeah, that's just one idea. There is also in regards to debugging, you mentioned, and Latifah was mentioning the showing the WordPress errors and warnings by enabling the setting in WP config. But also a good idea is to log your errors. So also in WP config, you can specify an error log file where whatever errors the site has will be logged to that. So if there's if your site goes down, that's like one of the first things you can check. That log file, just scan through.
With the error log file, or?
Yeah, the log file, the error log, the PHP error log. Scan through and see if there are any serious errors there. The fatal errors are the ones you should really be looking out for, because notices and warnings won't cause the site to malfunction usually. But if you find some fatal errors there, then that's a good place to start also. And it's good to, when you're setting up your error log, it's good to put it outside of your root directory for security reasons. And there are some hosts that keep an error log by default, so you can find out if your hosting provider does this. They will keep a PHP error log by default that you can access through cPanel or whatever control panel they may use. So those are a couple of ideas.
I know HostGator does that. I don't know about any other hosting platform. But anybody have any other techniques? All right. You could also have an outdated theme, and I also check depending on where you get your theme from. I also check on ThemeForest or wherever to see if the theme is updated, because sometimes outdated themes throw a lot of errors. So you can check that out also. So far, these are all the solutions or the troubleshooting steps or techniques I have found to help me or help me solve my problem. And you've also heard solutions or techniques from other developers who have experienced similar problems. And if I, at any point, come up with any other solution, or I find any or hear about any, I'll definitely share it with you in the group via the chat. And also, if you come up with any other solutions, also share it in the chat. We'll be very happy to get the information and implement it whenever we can. But this is what I have for you today. We're just recapping for what went over. We went over our 404 errors, and we've heard from Ron and some other people who shared how you can solve these problems. We've also heard about plugins that you can use and techniques, fixing missing theme, missing parent theme, maintenance errors, database connection, and widescreen of depth. Helpful plugins that I've come across or find that I believe will be helpful for some of the problems that you experience is the broken link checker, and that plugin it can be found on the WordPress repository or WordPress library, where it helps, you'll check the entire site and it will check if there are any broken plugins. There is also a website, I think, called Broken Link Checker or brokenlinkcheck.com that you can just plug in any website and it will be able to tell you if there are any broken links on the site. For GT metrics, it's not really a troubleshooting error, but it can tell you how you're performing as it relates to speed. If you're trying to find out if what theme a particular website is using, you can use what WP theme is that.com to check the version. Sometimes it doesn't show you everything. So I'll normally use builtwith.com, which is a little more advanced and it dives a little deeper in terms of servers that's used and technologies that the site use if you need to know that. To replace broken images, there is a plugin called Replace Broken Images in the WordPress library also that you can use to easily replace images without doing it really one by one. So you can take a look at that when you get a chance. But this is what I have for now. I hope this was helpful. If you have any other information that you wish to share, please do, and we can continue this discussion as we go along. That's the end of my presentation, and I'm going to hand over to Ron.
Great. Thanks a lot, Yara-Nee. You definitely shared some useful tools and a workflow for debugging errors. So that's, yeah, I think we have all benefited from your presentation. Just a note, we were supposed to have another presenter who didn't, who hasn't turned up. So,
hold on.
Yeah.
So I'm actually drafting up a quick presentation. So if you can, by 5 minutes, I'm saying it out loud, that would be perfect.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, well, yes, I was going to suggest that we can just speak about anything on this topic that Yara-Nee presented on, or anything else. One thing I will say is that for the developers in here, it's good to get familiar with debugging PHP. It's something that can save a lot of time and headache. It starts with the error logs, but also learning how to use the Xdebug tool, which comes available with PHP. On many shared hosts, you may not be able to use Xdebug, but if you can download the site and set up a copy on your local machine, then you can use Xdebug. And what that allows you to do, it allows you to inspect the running of the PHP program, in this case WordPress, in detail. It will you can literally run WordPress line by line until you reach the error. And on each line, you can see what variables are on the server. You can see what variables are in your application. You can inspect common WordPress variables like your WP query, your global WordPress variables, and your global PHP variables. At each point in the running of the program, you can see that. So yes, that's, I guess, my biggest point of advice is just to learn how to use Xdebug, because it will save you a lot of headache. So I'm going to open up the floor to anybody else who has any comments, questions, anything.
Xdebug is a software. What exactly is it? Okay,
Xdebug is a PHP extension that comes with PHP. So as I said, you may not be able to access it on most shared hosts. Certainly you can on your VPS hosts, and certainly you can on your local machine. You just have to enable it. I use WAMP for developing locally.
I'm using Docker.
You're using Docker. Well,
right.
If you install PHP, you have your PHP running in your environment, you can install the Xdebug extension. But if, like me, you use WAMP or XAMPP or MAMP if you're using a Mac, then when you go into your php.ini configuration file, you just Xdebug, the configuration is usually there. You just have to uncomment it. It's usually commented out. So you just have to uncomment it and check your check the values for each configuration option there, and you can look it up online. There are many tutorials for how to set up Xdebug. And the cool thing about Xdebug is that it integrates with your IDE. So I use PHP Storm, and so what that does in PHP Storm, Xdebug allows me to step through, I was just saying, line by line in PHP Storm, but I have a nice GUI to do it with. So line by line in PHP Storm, I can look and I can inspect variables and so on. And also VS Code, if you use VS Code, Xdebug integrates with that quite nicely as well. And I'm sure it does with most other popular text editors. So you can look for a Xdebug extension.
All right. Oshane.
Anybody else?
Okay, there's some more stuff I wanted to add, but I'm just going to show what I have. So what I'm going to present is a follow-up presentation from the previous presentation. The last presentation I presented on payment gateway for WordPress. So that's what I'm going to present on. Give me one moment.
All right, cool. Anybody else have any questions, comments? It doesn't have to do necessarily with what was presented before.
Okay. Everyone is seeing my screen?
Yes, we're seeing your screen, Oshane.
Okay, so I'm not going to go through the entire presentation, but what I'm going to do is follow up from the last point that I made in the previous presentation. But of course, this slide, I'll share it with the community so you can read more about it when it comes on to payment gateways available for Jamaicans using WooCommerce.
All right, great. And for those of you who weren't here at the last meeting, Oshane presented on this topic, focusing on the plugins available from the various institutions to integrate a payment gateway into WordPress, particularly with Sagicor, and he walked us through that, integrating the Sagicor payment gateway with WooCommerce. So yes, so Oshane, you can take it from here.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to skip over some minor details like what WooCommerce is, and just to brief mention it. WooCommerce is basically your storefront for your WordPress website. It has everything that you need when it comes on to buying and selling commodities online or software solution or anything at all. So WooCommerce is basically the storefront plugin. So as mentioned, you can sell like clothes, jewelry, electronics, downloadable items, service subscription, and so forth. Payment gateways that are available globally is that people tend to use this, like PayPal, Google Wallet, WePay, Stripe, WorldPay, 2CC, which is I think it 2Checkout or something of the sort.
Yes, to check
Oh,
out. Yes,
oh
it's
yes.
2CO in the logo.
Oh yes, 2CO. Okay. And this is basically what the payment gateway integration page look like in the WooCommerce payment setting, where you have your list of payment gateway, you enable it and then click setup to modify it. Out of the box, it comes with PayPal, cash on delivery, and so forth. And with PayPal, it's easy to set up. Just put in your credential. Well, you don't necessarily put in your credential, you put in the title and so forth, and click set up or link an existing PayPal, and it walk you through a wizard and connect it to your WooCommerce website. And this setup of WooCommerce PayPal and just having a storefront, it can take you from 20 minutes up to an hour to have a full-fledged storefront. But of course, the part of the video that will be a follow-up is things that you need to have on your storefront or your e-commerce website, which is from a security standpoint and also from the business standpoint. For example, refund policy, content, copyright, and so forth. So I'll touch base on some of those, but I'll just run through some of the what I presented in the previous presentation or previous meeting. So in Jamaica, there's Zoom, Zoom, sorry, payment. It's a PayPal service that if you use PayPal, you can use Zoom to get money from PayPal and get it directly into your bank account, or you could use PayPal to pay bills like JPS and water commission and so forth. There's also a wire transfer type of scenario that you could do with PayPal to see if you can get it connected with a BOA, Bank of America account, and then just wire transfer it to a local bank account. Or you can use Payoneer, which is a virtual bank similar to PayPal, but they give you a MasterCard and they do bulk payout. But Payoneer is a bit tricky because it's geared toward freelancer and freelancer being associated with a tech organization or some form of organization that does the payout to the Payoneer account. So it does not necessarily collect money for goods and service, but you can link it with PayPal if you have the business account to get money directly from PayPal, transfer money from PayPal to your Payoneer account, and you will have a Payoneer MasterCard. They will send you a Payoneer MasterCard that you can use in Jamaica or anywhere around the world. So as I mentioned before, with Zoom, you can pay bills online using your PayPal funds, and it's pretty easy, it's pretty straightforward, and so forth. When come on to institutions, banks in Jamaica, there's NCB who offer, well, they recently is offering a new payment gateway that is based on the First Atlantic Payment Gateway, which is what Sagicor, First Caribbean, CIBC is using as well. I'm not sure about Scotia. I think Scotia is using First Atlantic, but I'm not sure. But
yeah, Scotia too, unless they change.
Okay, so most of the banks in Jamaica are piggybacking off First Atlantic Payment Gateway, and of course, there's WePay, which is somewhat streamlined and probably one of the easiest to get started with. But WePay, as you know, I think WePay is from Barbados or some
Trinidad.
Trinidad. Oh yes, thank you. So of course, there's going to be some form of setup that you need to do with WePay and your local bank. So if you want to use like WePay, sure, but there's quite a amount of ops you would have to go through from the whole account setup and linking to your bank. Otherwise, Sagicor thus far is the easiest payment gateway I've used thus far, and from the business side of setting up your account and also getting the plugin and setting it up on WordPress and collecting pay. And you'll see shortly. So as mentioned before, some requirements is you need a business account. If you use WePay, you don't necessarily need a business account, but if you're using one of these local banks, you need a business account, and the website that you will require, of course, HTTP. Yes, it needs to be extremely secure, and there will be a lot of checks and scans for bug fixes or errors, as well as security vulnerabilities and so forth. So the security vulnerability is what I'm going to show you later in this presentation. But if you don't have SSL, and I always cringe when I don't see HTTPS on a website, especially a Jamaican website, you can get free SSL certificate, of course, if you use dedicated or VPS hosting, but you can get a free SSL certificate from you by using Let's Encrypt. If you're using shared hosting, you can use, I don't remember the website. I normally dedicated or VPS hosting from my WordPress website, but there's a website, I think it's Rapid SSL, or there's a website you can get SSL certificate from $4 to up to $12 per year, and it has all of the up-to-date security rules and encryption. So if you're using GoDaddy, which I think charge like $60 or $40, there are cheaper ways to get better SSL certificate. But yeah.
Namecheap also offers that service.
Okay.
Also, since we're on the topic, I use DreamHost. They do shared hosting, and they use secure servers, PCI DSS compliant servers, and they give you a Let's Encrypt SSL certificate for free perennially. Yeah.
Oshane, I don't need to cut you, but you mentioned the scanning for the secured website. Will we have to do the scanning, or do they do the scanning to ensure it's certified, or what?
So I'm not going to jump ahead of the presentation.
Oh.
So I will mention that
Sorry.
shortly. All right. So, all right, short answer is it's both. They will do it and you will do it. But you get more about that later in the presentation. All right, so what's the setup cost look like? Well, of course, for transaction on the website, when you come on to people purchasing, there's a 3 to 3.8% per transaction for all of the banks in Jamaica. So Sagicor is 3.5, I believe, per transaction. That's the fee that will be charged for every time someone make a purchase. And there's a monthly maintenance fee, but it's low. I think Sagicor has the lowest monthly maintenance fee, but they have the highest setup fee, which range for WordPress, it's 25,000. If you have a custom website, it's 50,000. For NCB, I think NCB is a flat either 30 or 20. I don't remember the actual cost for NCB, but most banks or institution has a setup fee, maintenance fee, and also a transaction fee. And there's some banks that you have to buy a plugin which goes into the or plugin fee. For example, if you use NCB will recommend that you use plugin, and that plugin is built from a company in Trinidad, and it's 200 and something per year. While Sagicor, you get that plugin for free. So of course, Sagicor it might be pricey at first, but it's a better deal at the end of the day when it comes on to the cost. Integration steps for Sagicor, and I'll go into Sagicor because that's my preferred payment gateway. What you need is to provide stuff from the merchant side, like a proposal letter, what your business about, what you're going to do on the site, and they will give you a checklist of things that you need to get done to get the Sagicor payment gateway integrated. On top of that, they'll do send you some security recommendation, which I'll touch on, and you will basically implement some of those security recommendations. Well, you should implement all, but I find that not all of them are really important, but it's good if you do implement all of them. And of course, you have to sign a bunch of forms. Doing business, you can't run away from forms and agreements. And without a doubt, you open a business bank account, which you're going to require the company document, TRN, TCC, proof of address, and some other details, which they will send you once you sign up. And there's a nice, simple onboarding process that they will guide you through on how to get started, the things that you need, and then what you need to do for the integration, and then move on. Once you integrate, they'll go through a testing process with you, where they'll test the site for security vulnerabilities and so forth, and send you report and feedbacks, and you basically make those changes. Once they review it and see everything is good, there's no risk, then you're approved and you're now going to be able to accept payment online. And they also give you a testing environment and a sandbox. Well, production account and a testing account. So one is like, if you're familiar with PayPal and payment gateway, PayPal gives you a sandbox account and a production account. The production is what you use on the live website to actually correct. And of course, the sandbox testing is what you use during testing, but it can't, process actual payment. And some of these I just mentioned, where they'll send you the test and production user account. They'll actually send you a test/demo master and visa card that you can try out, and the plugin that you need to install. And you're going to need to basically create an operator account, which is what going to be like the account information that you're going to put in the plugin so it can connect with their payment gateway service. And of course, they'll give you some guides that will help you with security and the forms that you need to sign when you completed the testing phase. All right, so the plugin that they use is WooCommerce MPGS. Once you type it in the plugin store, it will come up. You just add it, activate, and then you come to this page, which is the WooCommerce setting. Click on activate the plugin, click on manage, and then it will take you to this page, which you just put in the information that the will provide you in an email. Once you do that, you create your operator account on the Sagicor platform, and you need to create the operator account and actually put the operator account information in this form. And once that's done, you can go ahead, try and test out the Visa, debit, and MasterCard that they provide. And of course, as you see, I did it and, you know, got $100 of fake money. And of course, they give you a lot of analytics tool that you can query a transaction and find any payments that been made. And if you look at the bottom of the page, you notice that there's three transactions, 2 from a MasterCard and 1 from a Visa card. This is basically the test card that they provide you to just test if, you know, the integration is successful and everything is working normally. Quick note, when you're if you're, you know, integrating Sagicor payment, please remember the information you put in for the credit card, which includes the expiration date and the name of the card, the name on the card, and so forth. Those are stuff that you make up. But once you enter it, and make a payment, the next time you're making a payment, you have to use that said information. So I didn't do that when I did it the first time, and of course, one of the card kind of went to waste because of that. So remember the card details when you're making a payment. But all you get though is the debit card number, and every other information is like you fill that out and make it up on the go. So all of that, right, the process to, you know, integrate and test it from my side took 30 minutes. And after you completed all of that, you inform Sagicor about, you know, you've done the test, and ask them what's next. And Sagicor will know, oh, you would have to sign a form, by the way, and send it to them. And Sagicor will basically go ahead, once they get the information from you that they can go ahead and do their thing. They will run a couple of security vulnerabilities, check for any bugs, 404 errors on your site, check for performance issue and credibility. Afterwards, they'll send you a report with their findings and some recommended changes. And then, you know, you go through an iterative process of fixing, making changes, implementing the recommendation that they gave, that they will send you. And after that, you report to them, and you just continue with that until they say your site is good and ready to, you know, go live to start accept real payment. So this is the addition that I wanted to talk about. And this is a common security thing for WordPress, things that you need to add to your WordPress site to make it more secure. You've heard about XSS attack. You've heard about encryption. You've heard about like, you might heard about like people making some bot post to your comment. So which is actually SQL injection, which they're injecting directly to your database, because there's a vulnerability by default in WordPress with an endpoint. I don't remember the endpoint name, but the last part for that endpoint is post-comment. So they'll tell you that, okay, you need to disable that WordPress endpoint, and you need to add some of these headers, which, for example, you have strict transport security. And this is basically, the type of TLS encryption you're using. So a lot of websites I see are using version 1.0 and version 1.1, which is actually deprecated. The new version are 1.2 and 1.3. So right, for example, DBJ website is actually using version 1.1, and earlier this year, DBJ website has been at least 3 times in January. I can tell you a story about that, but of course, that's for another time. And there's other headers that you need to add, like the content security policy, which is to block XSS attacks. And this is where you put, okay, where are the JavaScript source data is coming from, or well, files coming from, where your basically static assets are coming from, where can it execute on your site, because someone can when they're making a submission on your website, or if they do a SQL injection, they can push JavaScript code, and when you load that page, you see like a pop-up or ads or something on their site that you didn't put. So this is where the content security policy comes in place. And of course, when it comes to how can you protect posting to your site, that's where the X-frame option comes in play. So X-frame option works in 2 ways. One, it blocks content to be loaded on other websites. For example, you know that people can use iframe to load your entire website on their website, or a portion of your website on their website. So the X-frame option you can use to block all of that embedding of your website on someone else's website, as well as if they're making certain submission, all of the submissions should only come from your domain. It can't come from another domain. Or you can list out the different domains that that you would mark as like whitelist, that it's okay to accept, loading and posting of data. And of course, you have the X content type, which stops certain, content files and so forth to be loaded and pushed to your website. And there's the referral policy and permission policy that you also need. Permission policy is not necessarily needed, but it's recommended. The reason why the permission policy is not necessarily needed, it's because the permission policy is relatively new. So not all websites and browsers have this header in place. But a permission policy is like, for example, allow the website to use a camera, to use to accept payment, or to use the geodata for your browser and so forth. So some of these headers will increase your security on your site a lot. But of course, if you don't configure them properly, you might notice that images aren't loaded on your site, loading properly on your site. JavaScript is not executing properly, and then if you check the console log, you see a bunch of JavaScript errors saying it can't find. For example, if you're using Google Maps, you know that Google Maps load their JavaScript library, you will see all of that being blocked by your website just because it's not configured properly. So there's so the script that or the headings that I tend to use, which always work for me, is basically this, and this is where you put these headers into your Apache header section, or you can put it in your .ht access file, which is in the root folder of your WordPress installation. And these headers is basically, for example, the first one, strict transport security. I basically allow it to be, information is okay on the root domain and also, well, the domain and also the subdomains. Xframe, I set it to basically same origin, so no one can basically embed their site on their site or somewhere else. X content, you notice no sniffing, no sniff, which basically blocks bots from checking your site for certain content vulnerability and so forth. Of course, you don't have to worry about search bots. Those are okay with this setting. And of course, with the XSL protection, you notice the mode is block, because you don't want anyone to just do any form of script injection to your site, regardless of what they're doing. Of course, if you want some script injection, you can basically state the URL or put condition to allow certain stuff. The only plugin I noticed that is affected by the XSS protection sorry about that. Plugin that is affected by the XSS protection is Jetpack. But how much of us use Jetpack? Anyone use Jetpack in here?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, so you find Jetpack as a useful plugin? Because I see it more of a burden than a useful plugin.
It's like a combination of a lot of things, but I only use like one feature.
There you go. That's why I don't use it, because it's doing too many things.
Yeah, it's like it's trying to fit everybody. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's another thing. Of course, there's plugins that you can just install and it will add all of these security for you. But as one of the security risk is having too much plugins. So if it's something like this, you can just put in your .he access file or Apache header. Then for me, well, I'm from a tech background. I don't see the need of having a plugin for something like this. And as you can see with the referral policy, I basically say no referee and strict origin when doing cross domain. And with the content security, you notice that, okay, the default source for all my asset is either either the same domain, which is indicated by self, or it must be a HTTP website. Same for the fonts, same for images. But if you notice with scripts like JavaScript, I put self, unsafe inline, unsafe eval, and its external JavaScript library must be a HTTPS JavaScript library. Why unsafe kind of sound tricky, but why unsafe inline and unsafe eval is needed is because you might have inline JavaScript that need to be need to execute. So unsafe inline and unsafe eval will allow inline JavaScript code to execute on your site without any problem. And the same goes for the style stores. There's unsafe inline, and all external CSS must be HTTPS. And the feature policy, wait a minute. So I kind of did something that I usually tell people not to do. So if you notice in the common security headers, I have permission policy. And in this I have a feature policy. So permission policy and feature policy is the same thing, but feature policy is the deprecated header for permission policy. So permission policy is supposed to be here. And as you can see, geolocation, vibration, payment, autoplay, and other permissions. So other things that you probably need to have on your e-commerce website as content is like terms and agreement or terms and condition policy, privacy, which includes refund, cancellation, and anything deal with payments. Because, of course, you know, if you're dealing with some form of you know, commerce, whether e-commerce or you have a local stores selling stuff, you need to have a policy when it comes on to refund or cancellation and so forth. So that's a requirement that you need to have on your site. With, of course, the website logo with the type of cars that they accept, you accept, the country that you operate in, the currency that you're paying in, and any additional terms and conditions someone has to accept during the transaction. Did someone ask a question? Does Jamaica have? So, GDPR, yes, we do. But it's not necessarily GDPR per se, but there's a data protection act that is being, I'm not sure if it's approved as yet, but I'm pretty sure it will be approved if it's not. And this is where you know, our data, it has to comply with the Data Protection Act for Jamaica, which is similar to the GDPR. And it also ties in the NIDS initiative. So that's a yes. But honestly, I follow GDPR and some of the rules and principles, but it's not, because it's not necessarily demanding right now. It's not all the time I implement the rules and regulation for GDPR, mainly because there's some customization in the Data Act for Jamaica. But anyone has any experience with GDPR for WordPress website or the Data Protection Act that in Jamaica, or implement anything of the sort?
No, but I know that once you are collecting information from EU users, especially without them knowing, without giving in the option to opt out, you can get some hefty fines. And regardless of where you are in the world, once you're collecting data on EU users, it can apply to you also.
Okay. All right. All right, thank you. So that's pretty much it. Hold on. It from my side. There's more in the presentation, but I'll not get into the details of the others. But if you if you've implemented a payment gateway, you can let us know which payment gateway you implement and how was the process for you. You can go on this link, which is bit.ly/33FFT28 and let us know. So we're collecting this survey to, of course, provide more insight on the available payment gateway in Jamaica. I don't know if I fully answered the question that you had. I think it's Johnny, you're the one who asked the question about the vulnerability scanner for the website.
Yeah, you answered that already.
Okay.
Is it hard to get a TCC?
No. So, all right, first thing, when you register, I found out this somewhat the hard way, mainly because when I registered the company, there's something that I didn't read, but I went to tax office. No, I went to NIS. But when you register a company, you assign a NIS the alt number. Of course you get a TRN, you get NHT, and you get a TCC for 3 months. Of course, that's if you check on the super form, the business registration super form. That's if you check that you're applying for a TCC, you'll get it once you're incorporated. If you are already incorporated and need a TCC, it's not difficult to get, but what happens is that you need clearance letter from NHT, NIS, and so forth to just state that you've paid all of your tax. It's similar to, what's that thing in America, RIS?
IRS?
Yes, it's similar to what they do to just check if all of your tax are paid and said, okay, you're tax compliant, because that's what the TCC is for, to ensure that you're paying your tax and so forth. So you can get an individual TCC, which is for individuals or persons, or you can get a business TCC, which is for the company. Both work the same way, but of course there are more forms and things to do from their business side.
Okay.
Oh,
and how long was the entire process in terms of filling out the form? Because I don't have a Sagicor bank account. I have a Scotia bank account, so I would need to sort out that entire process all over again. How long do you think is the process?
Okay, so I'm in the process and it's taking me a while, mainly because of 3 things. I register the company, but there's things that I don't have in place. However, others who've registered, they said, oh, it took 2 days, 1 day, and so forth, because they had things in place. For example, I don't have a company seal. They had a company seal before they incorporated, because yeah, you need to stamp stuff to know where it's coming from. So a company seal is something that you're going to need. You can get a rubber company seal, which is just a stamp, and that costs like 5,750. You need, like I said, the TCC. You need a copy of the certificate of incorporation. You're going to show them the actual copy, actual certificate, and also you're going to give them a copy. But this is, of course, the requirements is across majority of the banks, so it's not just Sagicor alone require these. So the article of association if you're a business name, it's just the certification of incorporation. You're going to need TCC, article, the company TRN. If you're a limited liability company, there's more stuff whereby you need to, each director will have to sign a consent form, and as well as the forms that they send, all of the directors has to sign it, including the company secretary. If you are a business name and a business name is just a sole trader operator, you just need to sign it yourself, because it's you alone for a sole trader. But of course, there are more checks and balance for a company. And each director, including this secretary, have to provide a proof of address. There might be a credit background check for the business and also for the each individual, mainly because there are times, you know, a business registered, then it's deregistered and they no longer operate, and then they re-register or renew the business. So there's background checks to check if, you know, this company don't owe anything. So of course, for a newly incorporated company, that's not a problem. If you're newly incorporated, they're going to ask you for a cash flow projection. If the business already exists, they're going to ask you for 2 months financial statement, 2 months to 6 months financial statement. There's to open the account, it's 50,000 Jamaican dollars. For most of the banks, you get 50,000 for all of the banks. JMMB, Sagicor, NCB, that's the cost to open.
Oh, wait, you mean when you're opening the bank account, you need to put 50 grand in there?
Yeah, that's, you know, for example, if you open a personal account, you need to open a personal account with 2,000.
Right.
So for companies, it's 50.
Okay. I thought it was 100, what you call 10,000 Jamaican dollars. I guess it's different for people. For other people.
So someone told me that it was 8. Another told me that it's 5. Another, oh, wrong website. Another told me a different amount. But when I go on, well, when I spoke to Sagicor, I go on their, oh, this is taking me to the login page. And I go to their website, it's saying 50,000 regardless. And it's same for JMMB, same for CIBC. I checked all of them and 50,000 seem like the standard. And this is for the savings account.
I can corroborate that for Sagicor. 50 grand is what was required to open the account as well.
Okay.
So yeah. But pretty much.
So hold on, is that like a minimum, like you have to always keep the 50 grand in there, or how does it work?
No, you can go below 50 grand after that point, but just to start the account, you need to put 50 grand in.
Okay.
Okay. But there's a lot of benefits with Sagicor based on what they sent me. I don't remember all of the benefits, but for example, they process checks, standing orders. You can have a single currency, multiple currency. Of course, they have RGS and ACH transfer, which does both local and overseas transfer, and also can receive payment. And there's not much maintenance fee with Sagicor. But of course, if you check out JMMB, account, JMMB is similar, but why I honestly, personally, I prefer JMB for you know, doing individual or personal accounts, bank account. But because of the whole payment gateway, Sagicor seem like the best thing to have. And if you notice, it's the same set of requirements for JMB: the certificate, the memorandum article, the TRN, TCC, all of the board of directors, the board of directors need to sign a valid license for the business, and yeah, so forth. So yeah.
Is there any way you can add that PowerPoint to your chat, to the chat, because there's a lot to take in.
Yes, I'm going to send it in the group, actually, in the Slack group. Okay, for those who've missed the previous presentation, so here are some of the stats from the previous presentation. I haven't updated this slide. So for example, payment gateway usage, most people use PayPal. Some use First Atlantic directly. There's a low percentage for Sagicor. It's relatively new. As you know, NCB was the bank that we were looking towards mainly before 2019, because they had multiple payment gateway in the past, like Plug and Play, Quicks, and now they had First Atlantic, and they had two other payment gateway, but like I said, they're now using First Atlantic. So you see that NCB and Scotia have a good chunk, and CIBC I hear have a nice payment gateway, which is using First Atlantic as well. But the individuals that, okay, I probably shouldn't say this on record, but the individuals who told me about Sagicor, not Sagicor, Scotia, the experience is nice, but the cost and the fees aren't nice. So that's the problem with Scotia. But I haven't tried their payment gateway to set it up, mainly because I know about the costs, and it doesn't make sense you set up something that will cost you more than you will earn versus using another.
So if people are using First Atlantic directly, why would we need to use Sagicor, CIBC, and all these other ones that are using First
Because
Atlantic?
if you use First Atlantic directly, you will be the one responsible to try to set up your bank account with First Atlantic. So hence the reason you use a bank where you're banking at to take care of those nitty-gritty to get it connected with First Atlantic.
Okay.
So that's the reason. Hold on. So other so average rating, you notice a Sagicor, well, almost all of the ratings when it comes to implementation is relatively good. But Sagicor is 17, PayPal is also 17. Like First Atlantic, which unbelievable is 19. But yeah, these are the stats right now. And of course, which this is what I believe in, NCB as the lowest. And anyone that's here who've gone through NCB payment gateway, they should know how painful it is, because you have to do majority of the work from scratch. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this quick, unplanned presentation. Any other question?
No, I think that's it for me.
All right, seems there are no questions, but I think that presentation was very thorough. Even though it was a quick presentation, it was very thorough and answered any question that came up in my mind. So thanks a lot, Oshane. Of course, if anybody has any questions, comments about anything at all, feel free to jump in now. But in the meantime, thanks, Oshane. Thanks, Yara-Nee, for your presentations. They were really helpful to us. Now I want to invite everyone here to join us on Slack. I think most, if not all, the persons here are already members on meetup.com. But in the Slack group is where we have, our daily communications, talk about anything WordPress related. It's a place to share the latest news, to get help with any issues you might be having with WordPress. Also, it's a place to find jobs because people, there are developers who want jobs, there are entrepreneurs who want to hire, and the jobs will come through the Slack group oftentimes. So Oshane just pasted the link in the chat. So I encourage everyone to join us on Slack. And if there's nothing else, then I declare this meeting over and I wish you all a good night. See you at the next meeting, which will be on December 10. For that meeting, we'll most likely have some entrepreneurial topics, some business related topics, not so much technical topics for that meeting. So stay tuned for that. I will put out those topics as soon as they have been finalized. But thank you all for showing up and have a good night.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Have a good night as well.